Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner, and today we're showing you the Titan Comics New York Comic Con panel for Charles Ardai's Gun Honey, the great comic book series currently out from Titan Comics. And the panel includes myself hosting, but really the meat of the panel is with Charles Ardai, the writer and creator of Gun Honey, and also the mighty Jake Devine, the editor of Gun Honey. Enjoy. Welcome to New York Comic Con 2021, and welcome to the Hard Case Crime Comics panel devoted to our magnificent new comics title, Gun Honey. And we've got a real privilege for you guys. We don't just have the mighty editor of Gun Honey, Mr. Jake Devine. We have the mighty author and creator of Gun Honey, Mr. Charles Ardai. How are you both doing, guys?
Great.
Excellent.
Couldn't be happier. It's not quite as good as Comic-Con when you go there in person and you have all the cosplayers and you get crammed in the little aisles, but we'll get back to that eventually.
Right on, Charles. It is not quite as good as that, but it is almost as good as that. Now, my name's Andrew Sumner, and I'm the EVP at Titan Comics, and I'm also the host of Forbidden Planet TV on YouTube. Please come and check us out. You'll find some very interesting stuff there. And Charles is not only the author of Gun Honey, he is also the founder and editor of Hard Case Crime, famous for a wide variety of spectacular crime and noir novels, at least one of which was written by Charles himself. And now Charles has pivoted from being a sometimes author and extremely experienced editor into being the creator of this magnificent comic book, Gun Honey. So Charles, what can you tell us about Gun Honey?
Sure, I'm delighted to. So the Gun Honey is a creation I've been working on for the last 5 or 6 years. Very excited about it. The idea is to imagine a character who's an expert at weaponry. She's a weapons expert. Her name's Joanna Tan. She grew up in Singapore, but left after her family was brutally murdered, created a new life for herself in California, where she became known as the person you go to if you need a weapon, a particular specific weapon. She'll get you the weapon you need, when you need it, where you need it, no questions asked, no matter how difficult that is. So she'll break a weapon into a high security prison for you. She'll get a weapon into the White House or the Vatican or Fort Knox. Anywhere that's hard to get into, she'll get in and she'll get you the weapon you need. But the no questions asked part turns out to be a little bit difficult when an assignment goes wrong and she discovers that maybe there were some questions she should have asked. And she is turned loose on the problem by an unnamed US government agency that says to her, you let a very dangerous man out of prison, whether that was your intention or not, we don't care. You've got to get him back. Your job now to get him back. And we're going to team you up with one of our agents, someone she has no intention of working with, no interest in working with, but she's stuck with him. And that's the story of Gun Honey.
Fantastic. And Charles, I know you're working with a wonderful artist who we were talking about off camera before this panel started, Angkor Keng. What can you tell me about your artist on this title?
So we were looking for new talent, and we're looking for somebody who was truly extraordinary and got lucky enough to find exactly that. Angkor Keng draws like a young Frank Frazetta, and it's all traditional media. If you see photographs of him at work, he is working with pen on poster board, not digitally, which is not to say that digital art can't be magnificent. It can, of course, and some of our covers are digitally drawn, but the classic traditional art form that Angkor Keng works in is a throwback to the same period that Hard Case Crime was created to celebrate, the classic film noir pulp fiction era of the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. So even though Gun Honey takes place in the modern day, it has some of the spiritual connection to those old days that is so irresistible. So for fans of film noir, fans of great old movie series like James Bond, I think there's going to be a lot here for people to enjoy.
Fantastic. And as we all know, the initial numbers on the series are just amazing, and a great testament, I think, to the power of the concept that you guys have come up with.
Well, I would say it's a testament to Jake and the work he's been doing. You know, when you have two editors, two expert editors working together, you could imagine us butting heads, but that somehow didn't happen. And getting to work side by side, and Jake has been absolutely amazing. I put together the scripts, but then everything from the scripts forward has been a collaboration, finding the right cover artists and putting all the issues together and so on. I could not ask for a better team to work with than the team at Titan Comics, and specifically the one who's on this interview with me today.
The great
Yeah,
Jake
it's been
Devine.
an absolute pleasure, yeah, working with you as well, Charles. I mean, yeah, from the scripts onwards, we've had a fantastic time doing the comic. Like, putting Ong's work together, seeing him do all the illustrations that were fantastic. Again, like from what you said earlier, Charles, the artist we looked at originally, he was the clear standout. I mean, his art is fantastic. And yeah, just working with you, Charles, as well. You've got a great history in editing and authoring, so it's been a learning experience for me as well. Just getting your feedback and stuff, and then having my own input, having worked in comics more. It's been a real collaboration, and it's been great.
Well, one of the things you've taught me a lot about is that editing comics and editing prose novels are two very different things, because you can put as many words as you want in a prose novel and nobody says you're running out of room in that panel. But on a comic book page, you can only have so many panels and so many words per panel. And sometimes you have to remember that. So when you're a classically trained novelist who's used to no limits, it's a little bit, I think, like going from writing, I don't know, plays in plain English to writing plays the way Shakespeare wrote them. And the end of every line has to rhyme with the next line. And if you don't do it, you're doing it wrong. So it was a learning experience for me as well. One of the interesting things, I think, has been all the cover artists we've gotten to work with. And most of those are people that you, Jake, brought to us. We knew we wanted to work with a certain number of people that I've just treasured for years and years. So Bill Sienkiewicz and Adam Hughes are two examples. And Robert McGinnis, I have a long history of working with. He's the movie poster painter, famous for the original James Bond movie posters. And he did 2 covers for us for Gun Honey. But that's only 4 covers out of what ended up being something more like, I think, 20 in total. I don't remember the exact total number of covers, but you kept coming back to me and saying things like, well, there's one more, there's yours. How about this artist? And it's turned out beautifully. There are artists I didn't know before who turned in really gorgeous work. Kendrick Lim, for instance, grew up in, or at least currently lives in Singapore, which is where the character's from. So I particularly love the idea of a Kendrick Lim cover on this. I'd never seen his work before, but my goodness, it's wonderful.
Yeah, him in particular has done an absolutely stunning piece of work. I was surprised when he turned it in. It was perfect. Sometimes you have it cover sent in and it's like, oh, you need to tweak this a bit, and change this. This is a bit funny, but his work, turned it in and it was absolutely stunning. And yeah, the fact that he's from Singapore, it sort of adds that authenticity to it. It gives it a sort of feel that you're actually part of the comic, the reality of it. And yeah, all the other artists we have, we've got a lot of hard case crime regulars that we've had on comics before. So like Faye Dalton, Alex Ronald, people like that have all done covers for us before on hard case crime titles, and it's great to bring them back in for this project, which has clearly been a standout for us.
Well, thanks. Yeah, Mark Aspinall did a cover, I think, for Trigger Man originally, and he did a beautiful cover for us, which has a kind of Apocalypse Now feel, which you'll see on issue 4. It hasn't been released yet. Faye Dalton did her own take on a sort of domestic refrigerator cover, but this is the opposite of your typical woman in fridge cover, which everyone dreads, where the woman is a victim. This is a woman who will not be victimized by anyone. She's packing 2 separate firearms, as you'd expect from somebody whose name on the street is Gun Honey, and she'll protect her own. In that particular cover, her own is a very attractive pussycat. Her cat makes an appearance on 3 separate covers. The cat was a secondary character. It's not like the cat has a major role in the story, but the cat does appear in the comic, and several artists decided that they needed the cat on the cover. So McGinnis has a cat cover, Faye's cover has the cat, and I think Kendrick's has the cat as well.
Yeah, that is a popular cat. I think it's going to have a spin. It's going to have a spin-off sequel to it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to make sure the cat comes back. If there's a Gun Honey Part 2, which it seems likely.
Gun Kitty, maybe.
Seems entirely likely. you really do need to give the cat's due, I think.
People love cats. This was completely accidental. She could have been a dog person, but she was a cat person. That's how it was. So this cat is going to be well taken care of. But yeah, so part of the appeal of the character, I think, is harkening back to sort of classic strong female characters in crime fiction who tread the fine line between femme fatale on one hand, which is generally a term for a female character who manipulates events in order to get her goals satisfied, and they're frequently villains on one hand. And then you have sort of action hero types like Modesty Blaze, who was a kind of female James Bond figure. created by Peter O'Donnell and who starred in comic strips way back when in a series of novels and even a film or two. I think Quentin Tarantino produced a Modesty Blaise film on a very, very low budget once. And that character type.
Is that the Ann Turkel one? Or was that have you ever seen that?
No, I know. I only understood.
Oh, no, it's after the Ann Turkel one. The Ann Turkel one was
right?
a TV movie.
There were at least two. And I know Nick and Viv run Titan together. Nick had at his fingertips every piece of information about Modesty Blaise you could possibly imagine. And he was explaining that Quentin Tarantino optioned the rights and was about to lose them. The contract said that if you don't make a movie by such and such date, you lose the rights to Modesty Blaise. And so he rushed a movie through into production with only months left on a very low budget, just so he wouldn't lose the rights. And according to Nick, the movie that came out of that, you might expect it would be terrible. He actually said it was quite good. He said it was really good. And very often that's the case. You know, pulp fiction is best created sometimes on a low budget, very high velocity. You know, you're telling a story for by the seat of your pants for the fun of it, and that fun comes through. So I hope Gun Honey has some of that flavor, that people will realize that this was a labor of love, trying to create a character like these great old heroines, and not that the heroine's old, but in the spirit of these heroines of decades past. And hopefully everyone will find something to enjoy there. She's very competent. She's the best in the world at what she does. She's very beautiful, all the attributes you could possibly want from a comic book heroine. But she's also dealing with a situation of great moral ambiguity. You know, she thinks she's not a killer. She supplies people with weapons, but she doesn't kill anyone. She doesn't use the weapons herself until she finds herself in a situation where maybe it's not so clear cut. And that's always exciting. You know, you want to challenge the characters.
That is the hook for your wonderful drama. Now, one of the things that speaks as the quality of what you've written, Charles, of the book that you produced together with Ang, is the wonderful amount of endorsements you've received from key figures in the crime writing industry, the crime writing art field. Could you just tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, you know, Jake and I were talking about who to send the book to show it to, who would be interested in this sort of comic book. Of course, crime comics have never been quite as big a section of the crime field, of the comic field, as superheroes, for example, or even something like horror comics with zombies. That's bigger than crime comics, but there are people in the crime comics field who are gods of that field. So Max Allan Collins is famous for writing Road to Perdition, which became the Oscar-winning movie. And he also created Ms. Tree, who had the longest run of any detective comic book in history, I believe. He was also incidentally the Dick Tracy writer for the comic strip in the newspapers for a decade. And so we showed it to Max Allan Collins. Ed Brubaker, who of course is very well known among superhero fans for his work on Captain America, also did several lines of crime comics, starting with one called Criminal with Sean Phillips. And most recently, he has a series called Reckless, and they're all terrific, really wonderful.
Amazing book, Reckless, very good.
That's Brubaker. And then we also showed it to Duane Swierczynski, who is both a novelist and a comic book writer, and has a taste for crime. And all three of them came back very positive, and I was very grateful. I was really touched by it. And their comments are on the back cover of issue 1. I don't know if we'll have anything different to put on the back of issue 2. I don't know yet, but issue 1, it's got comments from Ed, Max Allan Collins, and Duane Swierczynski, and I couldn't be more grateful.
And it's so well deserved as well, mate. Jake, so you've worked on you've edited a wide variety of comics, and you're well known at Titan. One of the things that you do is you edit our range of Doctor Who comics. Now, I was thinking in terms of gear changing as an editor, it's very, very different editing Doctor Who to editing Gun Honey. So how did you find that transition?
Yeah, it's very different. But he says I have worked on several different projects in my time at Titan, and a lot of them vary in ways of genres, you know, dealing with different licensors and all the different needs that they have, and things like that. So working on Gun Honey, one was nice and refreshing because the licensor happened to be Charles, who I'd worked with previously, and also as an individual, it's so much easier to, you know, to have that collaboration, and obviously as the author as well, it's easy for him to convey exactly like his vision and what he's thinking, and it's easy for me to then feed back to him what I'm thinking. So it makes it that much easier to work on in that respect. But also where I had recently worked on another hard case crime comic with Charles by Cynthia Von Beulah, so Binky Woodcock, done quite recently. So the crime element is similar there. So I'd had the sort of experience of working on that one almost at the same time. So Minky has just been released a few months ago, but Gun Honey I was working on at the same time, pretty much. So it was that learning curve at the same time, working on Minky Woodcock and Gun Honey, and it sort of helped to build that experience with the same genre on different projects at the same time, and seeing how they're sort of getting to work with Charles as well on both of them, and seeing how different creators work in that genre. It made it a lot smoother, I think. And also the fact that with Gun Honey, we were very fortunate in that we had a long lead up with this, and because again it's Charles's love project, so we put the time into it. It wasn't something where like we were, a lot of our projects like Doctor Who, for example, we would release it at the same time as the TV show or a film or something that we're doing. There was no pressure on that. We could actually put the time into it, you know, make it put the care into that and really get into it, and use the experience of working on it to make it the best that it can be, rather than sort of rushing it through and just doing the bare bones of, oh, this is this hard case crime comic, let's just get it out. And I think that's what's made it such a success, is having that time to really put the effort into it, and not just doing it as a sort of run-of-the-mill comic, oh, it's just an extra one, let's get it through. It's actually well deserved because of the work that we've put into it, I think.
I don't think people generally appreciate how important scheduling is in comic books or any kind of publishing, I suppose. It's certainly not the sexiest part to talk about, but to put in perspective, I think from the day the first panel got drawn to the day the last panel got drawn was 2 years. So this was 2 years of work. So when I compliment Ang for doing traditional media instead of digital, that takes time. And doing it right takes time. And if you look at the amount of cross-hatching the man does in the backgrounds of his images, or he'll have a scene that takes place in an office, and every panel in the ceiling is separately drawn and separately stippled. And the male character's suit jacket is a houndstooth design. And by God, he's going to draw every houndstooth. It takes time. And so this was 2 years of work. Now, an interesting question is, now that people might be eager for a second installment, do we have the luxury of spending 2 years doing the second installment? People will get tired waiting for it. So we might, we're not going to cut corners, but we might have to find some way to get the thing out sooner than 2 years. But it was a real luxury for this one to be able to get every page, every panel just right.
Yeah, and just to put that into perspective as well, 2 years we had on this. Normally that sort of 4-issue arc can be anywhere from like 6 months or less. So we really did have a good amount of time to invest in it.
Yeah, and it's it'll be interesting to see when you've got first movies that are a labor of love, and then comes a sequel. That doesn't always turn out so well. So we're going to have to fight the sequel curse. But, Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the best movies ever made. Temple of Doom, some people like it.
Yeah, I'm one of them. So.
Okay, there you go. Well, I certainly like Kate Capshaw singing Anything Goes in Mandarin in the opening scene. That part's great.
Sure. Well, the opening scene's fantastic.
The opening scene's fantastic. And the rope bridge at the end is pretty darn good.
Yeah,
the mine cars, but everything between Anything Goes and the mine cars, well, we could talk.
But Raiders is kind of a structurally perfect film, though, isn't it? And that's
Raiders
the difference.
It's one of the all-time great scripts. That and Die Hard, and there are a few really, really outstanding scripts.
Wow. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now
we need a whole other panel for that.
Exactly.
That's right.
It's interesting that we're getting into movie and script analysis, because that is redolent of the technical art of being an editor. And I wanted to speak to you both about your respective journeys to being where you are now. So we're talking to you primarily in your authorial capacity, Charles, but of course you're a man who loves this wonderful genre, a genre I work in as well, as you know, loves it so much that you created your entire own personal, very successful book imprint out of it. So what was the journey for you to creating hard case crime? What was the spur and what was the journey?
Well, I started out, although I started as a writer, as you say, very early in my career, I started editing collections of short stories. And I edited, probably 20 different books, mysteries about cats, mysteries about priests, mysteries about food, different topics. And I learned from that what goes into making a good collection. And that's similar to what goes into making a good series of books. And when in 2001, I had started an internet company called Juno, which is not very well known now, but at a certain point, it was a free internet service, one of the original free internet services. And that company merged with a competitor, and it left me at liberty to do something else. And I was talking with a friend of mine who worked on Juno named Max Phillips, who's another novelist and a graphic designer. And over drinks, we said, you know, those old paperback crime novels looked so good. They felt so good in your hand when you would hold one of those books, those slender books that sold for 35 cents or a quarter. And they were only about 150 pages long, and they really got into the action right on page one, and they had a beautiful, sexy painted cover. Why don't people publish books like that anymore? You and I, Max, we were born too late to write for those imprints because none of them exist anymore. Why doesn't anyone do that anymore? And then, because we had had quite enough drinks for the night, we said, why don't we do it? Why don't we start our own imprint? Now, that's a crazy idea. It's a terrible idea. Why did we even think that was a good idea? Well, we were drunk. But when the morning came, somehow, instead of sobering up and saying that was a terrible idea, Max dummied up some covers. And he said, you know that idea we talked about last night? It was 2 weeks later. So do you remember that idea we talked about 2 weeks ago? And I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. What idea? And he showed me some sample covers. And they were gorgeous. And anyone who's seen the Hard Case Crime covers knows what they look like. They look very old-fashioned, but in the best possible way. And I said, if Max can make covers that look this good, I've got to fill the insides. I've got to come up with books that live up to the quality of those covers. And so we started pitching around town, trying to find a publisher willing to work with us to put these books out. We found a company called Dorchester Publishing. They don't exist anymore. They went out of business about a decade ago. But for the first 7 years or so, we worked with them. They were a pleasure to deal with, really good people. I'm sorry they're no longer around. It wasn't because of us. And then we teamed up with Titan. Now, Titan is UK based. It's a London based company that has divisions in all of book publishing and comic book publishing and merchandise and magazines, various different things. And everything they do looks great. And so we knew that this would be a good home for Hard Case Crime because the look, the visual appeal of our covers was so integral to the kind of experience we want to give to readers. And so we said we would hook up with Titan and hope things would go well. And we've been there ever since. Titan's been a pleasure to work with. We've been there since 2011, so it's now been 10 years. We've published more than 100 books, most of them with Titan. And this has included books by Stephen King, Ray Bradbury, Mickey Spillane, Ed McBain, Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho, Cornell Woolrich, who wrote Rear Window, a whole bunch of really wonderful authors, both very well known and little remembered, different categories of authors, and we love both categories. So we're trying to introduce readers to great reads they might have missed and give current writers, whether they're well known or not, a chance to write in this old style.
Yeah, we are just so wonderful. And it's such an embarrassment of riches, the Hard Case Crime list. There's so much great stuff in there that even when you are a massive crime novel fan, it's very difficult. I find it very difficult to say to people, oh, well, okay, well, I'm going to pick out 5. These are the 5. Because it's impossible to not pick out 50.
It is hard. You know, even if you just look at an author like Max Allan Collins, who's written books for us, it's hard to pick out 5 by him to recommend because he's probably written 12 for us, 20. I don't know exactly how many it's been at this point. And he's a terrific writer. So I'm always trying to find, how do you pick 1 to recommend? How do you pick even 5? I think you're right. And on the comic side, so we started comics later. We had the idea for Hard Case Crime novels back in 2001. So that's 20 years ago. Comics was probably about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago with Krista Faust's comic Peatland. She co-wrote it with Gary Phillips. The art was by Andrea Camerini. And I think the next was Walter Hill. We did 2 books with the film director, Walter Hill. Those were picked up from Europe where they had been published in French, but never in English before. We did American English adaptations of the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo books. There were 4 of those. And the comic book line began in that way. But we were always, again, trying to do original work that was brand new, like Peatland or Gun Honey, and picking up books that probably our readers, especially in the US, also in the UK, might not have read because they were originally published in French or Italian or in some other market. And it's been a terrific mix. And I think, Jake, when did you start on working on Hard Case Crime comics? What was your first?
My first Hard Case Crime, I want to say maybe The Big Hoax.
Oh, maybe. You worked on Mickey Spillane, did you? Or not yet? That was before your time. The Mickey Spillane, The Night I Died.
Yeah, I think that was the last one before I started working on them. I mean, I would have dipped my toes in here and there with them, but I wouldn't have been the actual editor on them. So I think Big Hoax. How did we
end up with The Big Hoax? That was one that you presented to me, and I had never heard of it.
Yeah, that one was. I think that was in the works before I took over. So that was. Yeah, so that was another one that was a foreign book that was then we presented to translate in English and publish it. So that was something that had been negotiated, I think, before I took over, and then it was ready for me to crack on with it when I took over as the Hard Case Crime editor. And then I think Minky was straight after that. So
Right.
just the three I think for Hard Case I've done, but hopefully not the only three.
No, definitely not the only
but
three.
Definitely the first one I read was Normandy Gold, because that was one of the first ones, one of the first comics of Titan I read when I started working there, and I absolutely loved it.
That's right. Yeah, Normandy Gold, just so people know, is a collaboration between Megan Abbott and Allison Galen, who are two novelists. Megan Abbott in particular has been getting rave reviews for a book she just published about the world of ballet, a sinister noir psychological thriller in the world of ballet. And I think it's called The Turnout, and I'm dying to read it myself. Megan is someone I've been dying to work with for years and years. She won the Edgar Award for her novel Queen Pin, which she originally wrote with Hard Case Crime in mind. In fact, she wrote the first half of the book and showed it to me, and I immediately made her an offer. I didn't care what the second half was going to be. The first half was so good that I was confident we'd want it. And in fact, the second half was outstanding. But she had a pre-existing contract with, I think it was Simon & Schuster. And the thing about Simon & Schuster is they're very big. And if they want to outbid you, they can outbid you, unless maybe you're a Random House. But if you're a Hard Case Crime, the big guys can outbid you. And so they managed to keep Megan on their payroll instead of on ours. And they got Queen Pin, and she won the Edgar for it, which always frustrated me. And I was always dying to bring Megan back in some capacity. And she and Allison had written this comic book script. I might have the details wrong. I think they originally wrote it with DC in mind when they had the Vertigo line of crime, little black and white, digest-sized crime comics. And the line shut down before they ever had the chance to do Normandy Gold. And so they sent the script to us, and we looked at it, and it was wonderful. So I was thrilled to do it. The one interesting technical challenge was that it was originally written for that small black and white digest format, and the number of panels on a page in that format is different from a full-size comic book. And so we had this challenge: how do you revise the script, which was all planned for the page size, a different page? I mean, it's minutia that nobody cares about, but it was an interesting challenge.
Another challenge specific to comics, that sort of thing
that
you don't think about until you get to it, and it's like, oh wait, this is a whole nother challenge.
You never think about it. It's like writing
not just number of words.
You have to get the right number of syllables on the right line, and then just how do you break it? If it was originally going to be a single volume graphic novel, and you want to publish it as 4 separate comic book issues, or in that case, I think it might even have been 5. How do you break it into issues so that each issue ends at an appropriate issue-ending cliffhanger type spot? It wasn't written that way originally, but I think it came out really well.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. We touched upon other people who work within the crime and noir space in comics, and I was thinking for both of you, if you say take comic books, novels, movies, within this genre, what are your personal favorites that you've seen out there that you would savor in each of those aspects of producing noir?
Well, if you want novels, the great classic noir novels, people will argue if you should pick Raymond Chandler, who created Philip Marlowe, or Dashiell Hammett, who created Sam Spade. I've never been a Hammett boy myself. As good as The Maltese Falcon is, I'll take Chandler any day. So for me, the classic hard-boiled private eye novel to start with is The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler. It's a beautiful book. If it doesn't leave you in tears at the end, you're far more hard-boiled than I am. But there are plenty of others. If you want a living writer, Lawrence Block, who has written several books for Hard Case Crime and many, many more other than for Hard Case Crime. He has a series of novels about an alcoholic detective named Matthew Scudder, who was played by Liam Neeson in a recent movie called A Walk Among the Tombstones. The movie was quite good. The books were
He was particularly good. I thought he was better than the film, to be honest. He was great casting for Scudder, though.
You're absolutely right. Liam Neeson was outstanding as Scudder, and much better than Jeff Bridges, who's an outstanding actor too. Jeff Bridges played him in an old movie with a script by Oliver Stone called 8 Million Ways to Die. But you will not go wrong if you want to read a book. I would not recommend either of those as the best noir movie ever made. Watch LA Confidential, watch Chinatown. There are plenty of noir. If you want a really obscure one, watch The Last Seduction. Last Seduction with Linda Fiorentino, amazing movie. Don't watch the Matt Scudder movies as the best noir movies ever made, Go back to the black and white movies. Watch Out of the Past. Watch, Touch of Death. Actually, Touch of Death is Charles Williams. That's a book we published. I'm thinking of a completely different movie. Touch of Death was a very good book, but not a good movie. As far as I know, not a movie at all. But then if you want comics, you really couldn't do better than starting with Road to Perdition. It did become a movie. The movie was quite good. Max Allan Collins' Road to Perdition is another one of those really stunning achievements. He's written a lot of comics, everything from Batman and Dick Tracy to his own original characters. But that book is just terrific. So Road to Perdition would be high on my list.
Well said, mate. How about yourself, Jake?
Awesome. I mean, Charles is definitely the expert here. I think he's covered so many things there. I guess for me, I mean, I don't know if you'd call this more neo-noir, but I mean, Sin City for comics is a big one for me because that was sort of the first one that I read outside of. So I grew up a lot with the superhero Marvel and DC comics, and that was one of the first comics I read that was outside of that genre and more into the crime, and really opened my eyes to what comics could be outside of superheroes and that kind of thing. So that was a big influence for me growing up.
Yeah, Sin City is terrific. I'd love it if we could get Frank Miller to do a cover for Gun Honey.
Yeah.
Oh man, it would
maybe the sequel.
Yeah,
maybe.
That would just be so awesome. And of course, particularly the first movie is such a great adaptation of the source material thing. I think the first of the two is great, and it is kind of adapts that material just about as well as it could be adapted to the screen. Those are great answers. I'm gonna chip in with. I would say that. You've got to go for a bit of Kiss Me Deadly when it comes to
Kiss Me Deadly, yes. So you're Mike Hammer.
Yeah, of course. You've got to take that. And I would say somebody you touched on before. I think Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. I think the kind of Criminal Wheel series that's pretty unbeatable. Contemporary noir crime comics. And the other series you mentioned that they're working on at the moment, Reckless. That is a very, very interesting contemporary update on the men's adventure heroes that you'd find in the men's adventure titles. So it exists somewhere in the middle ground between the Destroyer, the Executioner, and John D. McDonald. Somewhere in that continuum, but with a very modern sensibility. While it's set in the 80s, I think it's about the best comic book I've ever read about the sun-bleached LA of the 1980s. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
I love the nostalgia. Anytime there's nostalgia, even if it's for a period I didn't live through, I love it. So I love nostalgia for the 1920s. I'm not that old. I did grow up in the 70s, so 70s and 80s particularly sweet for me. But the World War II nostalgia, I'm a sucker for it.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, well, the visuals are so great, and can't beat the hats, right? There's something about it's the hats.
I've tried to beat the hats. You put a hat like that on, it doesn't make you look like you belong in that period. There are people, at the first year we launched Hard Case Crime, we thought it would be fun. There was a book expo trade show. They don't have trade shows anymore, sadly. Maybe one day. But we went to a trade show where we launched the line, and we hired 3 actors to wear actual period costumes. We went to a Hollywood costume shop and we got period outfits from the 40s, and we dressed them and we picked people who looked right in them. And so we had a guy in a fedora and a trench coat, and he was 6'2" and craggy faced, and he looked beautiful. I put the hat on, I put the trench coat on. I look like a New Yorker with glasses and a pointy chin. I do not look like I belong in a film noir. There's just no winning. You can't, the hat isn't enough. It's like you put a fedora on me, I don't look like Indiana Jones.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, it's like only a handful of contemporary actors look good as cowboys, right?
That's true.
Most of them can't pull it off. The guys in Tombstone did a great job. All of those guys look good as cowboys.
Have you seen the trailer for the new Clint Eastwood movie, Crime Macho?
Yeah, right.
I'm looking at this guy and I'm thinking, I don't know how old he is. He's not a young man, but good Lord, he looks like he belongs in that desert setting with the tumbleweeds and the guns clicking. And I hope he can make a couple more movies, because nobody looks like Clint Eastwood anymore.
It's so true. That the weathered landscape of his face. The weathered landscape of his face.
That's a noir line if I've ever heard one. That's the beginning of a book.
Yeah,
you can come on for the co-writer of the sequel.
I would never presume to do that, but I'll be there in the background shouting that phrase out. That's for sure.
Good for sure. So we have a lot of fun doing these things, and in some ways it feels like we're interlopers because we're young guys. By and large, we weren't around for this first noir era. Neither, for that matter, was Tarantino. So we're all playing in a sandbox that we inherited, and we are just trying to do it justice. Even though justice is the last thing you get in a noir story, we're trying to do justice to this great tradition, and hopefully give people a reading experience that will make them seek out some of the actual artifacts from the period. So if somebody reads Gun Honey and then goes and finds Modesty Blaise, I'm thrilled. That would be great. That would be a great tribute to our success in creating this morally ambiguous, very talented, but also slightly troubled heroine.
Oh, Charles, well said. And guys, when you look through your debut issue 1, and what stands out to you as what's the thing that you're the proudest of that's in that issue?
Well, we open with a page 2-3 spread of our lead actress being our lead character being viewed through the lenses of a pair of binoculars of a yacht off the coast of Greece, and she looks very good in those binocular lenses, and I think it's a nice entrance. I remember reading a review of Star Trek II when that movie came out that talked about the entrance William Shatner makes as Captain Kirk, surrounded by a nimbus of light, which is true. You've just watched the Kobayashi Maru crash and burn, and then in comes Captain Kirk like an angel surrounded by light. I think how a character makes his or her entrance matters. And I think our Gun Honey makes a really nice entrance on the beach of Santorini.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
how about yourself, Jay?
I'd say, just following off that, it's almost like that Ursula Andress moment, which is what one of our Adam Hughes cover is partially inspired by. I think our publisher Nick really liked that idea, and we wanted to get it in somewhere, and we managed to do so. So, but yeah, that sort of wow factor of the introduction of that splash page is really good. And yeah, just all of Ung's art in that issue is just, there are some amazing like panels of just, there's one of her jumping out of a plane. There's some great ones of her just driving a car, and she just looks so, focused and intimidating, really. This girl has got power, she's driving a car, don't get in the way of it. Yeah, and also just sort of following on from what you said earlier, Charles, I think the fact that this character she's sort of the evolution of these strong female characters that have developed in the crime genre for years. She's not just like inspired by femme fatale or like an action hero. It's sort of turned on its head, and she's become her own character. Like she's not like a classic sort of spy or working for the bad guys. She's got her own character, she's got her own reason for being, and her own unique special skill, which I don't think we've ever seen before.
Yeah, we had conversations with folks in Hollywood, and I say Hollywood broadly because, of course, Hollywood is international at this point. And I described the character to various producers, and we ended up signing a development deal with a pair of producers, one based in the US and one based in Malaysia, both of them very, very talented. And one of the things that attracted them, they told me, was that she did a different job than any other character they'd ever seen. They certainly had seen plenty of female assassins, Atomic Blonde is a female assassin and Salt is a female assassin. But nobody had ever told a story about a person whose job it is to put weapons places. She breaks in places. She's not a thief. She doesn't steal things. She breaks in places so that she can leave things there. That's different. That's something you haven't seen before. And so, it leads to questions like, if this turns into a streaming series, which may or may not happen, but if it does, what's the structure of it? Do you have each episode be another case where she has to break in somewhere impossible and leave something behind? You probably don't want to repeat yourself that much, but how do you make use of this unusual job she has? And that's one of the things we're discussing with the producers and screenwriters right now. It's very exciting. It will be fun to see this come to television. I'm sure it'll have many differences. One of the things they said is, in a comic book, you can have interior monologue. That's a development that's really taken off in the last 20 years. If you look at old Superman comics, Superman wasn't talking to you in little dialogue boxes. But now you have a character, and she can be a sole practitioner. She's basically a loner, and you know what's going on in her head because you get to read her words. But you can't do that on TV. You're not going to do a voiceover. And so one of the things they said is she's got to have a crew, who supplies her guns, right? She's puts the guns places. Does she make them herself? No, somebody supplies her with the guns. Okay, what if she gets wounded? Well, there's got to be a doctor. Somebody's going to have to patch her up when she gets wounded. And so you're going to end up with this sort of family of people that she has to deal with, which gives her people to talk to. In a comic book, she doesn't need anyone to talk to. She can talk to you. She can talk directly to the reader. So she has this sort of frenemy love interest in the series, but really it's a two-character. There are other characters, but it's really kind of a two-character series on the comic book page. But if it gets to television, it'll suddenly expand and be a 6-character story because you need more actors, you need more characters. Can't just be one person.
Yeah, Charles, it's very exciting that you're in a situation where you and Ang have created this book. Jake's edited it. You've already got your TV deal in place, and
well,
it seemed. And of course, one always has to be cautious, right? And reserved about these outcomes. But looking at things where you are now, you've won an Edgar, you've won a Seamus, you've set up the book imprint of your dreams. You've got the comic book of your dreams coming out right now, available at all good comic book stores, Gun Honey.
And bad ones too. You can find it everywhere.
Yeah. Well, it's not my job to talk about the bad ones. It's to
there are no bad ones.
Celebrate the good ones.
In some ways, there is no such thing as a bad comic book store. I remember being 12, 13, 14, going into some comic book stores that were seedy and dangerous places, and I didn't feel comfortable at all. But you know what? They had new comics. That's a good comic book store. I don't care, so I'll get mugged outside. I got my comics. But anyway, so I've done all that. What's next? Boy, I guess I could die happy. I guess at this point, I'm done. I haven't made a feature film yet. I did make a TV show called Haven, working with one of the same producers we're working on for Gun Honey. And we worked on that for 6 years. It was based on a book that Stephen King wrote for Hard Case Crime called The Colorado Kid. So I got to work on TV, and I'm very excited to do that again, but I've never made a feature film. That's a very different experience. TV is much more writer driven, and features are these days much more IP driven, director driven. But wouldn't it be exciting at some point to make a feature film? So that's on my bucket list. We'll see. I don't think that's necessarily Gun Honey, because I think Gun Honey lends itself so well to an ongoing series. But I think doing a 2-hour feature film would be great fun. And maybe it's a superhero movie. Who knows? If those haven't worn out their welcome by then.
Maybe it's about her cat.
Maybe it's about her cat, exactly. Well,
surely
I'll tell you,
surely her cat is an animated
play the
series.
Cat.
An animated series for the cat, right?
That's an animated series for the cat. That's it. Yes.
Right on. I don't know. I think the hard case crime universe has a ring to it. So I think the place
the
to
hard case crime
is
cinematic universe. Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thor meets Gun Honey. There you go. We've got it. We've got it covered.
There we go.
We can get Scarlett Johansson to play her, perhaps. Except then, God, we'll never sell the rights to Disney. That's for sure.
Well, Charles, Jake, it's been wonderful talking to you about this great artistic achievement. Not just a wonderful and entertaining comic book, but a beautifully illustrated by Ang Ho Kang and written by Charles Ardai and edited by Jake Devine comic book Gun Honey, which we at Titan, with our comrades at Hard Case Crime, are so proud to be publishing. And I just think it's a testament to the endeavors of all of you that this 4-part series is such an absolute killer slice of comic book crime noir. And my virtual 1930s hat is off to both of you.
Tip your hat.
And I can't begin to tell the people watching this panel how much you are going to enjoy this amazing comic book.
Well, thank you very much. I am thrilled to bring it to you. I will tell you that in the great tradition of crime stories, things are not always as they appear. So be prepared for twists in issues 2, 3, and 4. You might think you know where the story's going. I promise you, you don't. And I hope you're happy when you get to the end with how it turned out.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and we've also got some extra things in the comics to look out for. So it's good we didn't bring it up to now because it will be a surprise. But there is an interesting article in issue 1 about where the name Gun Honey comes from. So look out for that, and there'll be more stuff in future issues.
Fantastic.
As well.
I as you know, Jake, I love a good DVD style extra at the back of the book, and that's a great tradition in crime comics, and I'm very pleased to hear that you're maintaining that tradition. That's amazing.
Excellent.
And also, just one thing I'd be remiss if I didn't say earlier, I was mentioning about other titles I'd worked on. There is also the volume 3 of Mystery Collection, which has recently come out, which I worked on by the amazing Max Allan Collins and Terry Beattie. So if you haven't got that, go and get it.
Well said, mate. And in fact, that that volume 3 collection is in fact the origin collection, isn't it? That's the very first mystery stories.
The very first comics that were released. Yeah.
I think
Brilliant.
that's right. Some of them are black and white. Some of them have one color in
Yeah.
addition to black and white, a little red.
Yeah, the first chapters I think are black and white, and then the rest are in color because those were the original releases.
Yeah, it was a lot of work to hunt down those original issues, and you did an amazing job getting them remastered. This is the classic work of an editor. You know, it's curation of great old material that people can't find anywhere.
And of course, the answer to the trivia question that nobody watching this panel is asking is, the thing that Jake, Charles, and myself have in common is we have all edited the great Max Allen Collins. So there we go. But once again, this has been the Gun Honey panel for New York Comic Con 2021. Everybody watching this, you really won't be disappointed with Gun Honey. It's been an absolute treat. And you've been watching myself, Andrew Sumner, but more specifically, the great Jake Devine and the spectacularly talented and humble Charles Ardai. Take care, guys, and take care, everyone. And we will see you in the funny papers. Take care.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.